All right, well, welcome back. Here at the top of the hour, noon here, 10 o'clock Mesa, we are going to move into a session from Bryan Krusniak, the Associate Vice President for Information Technology Services. Assistant, Associate.
Not really sure.
One of those two. And he's going to do a session on wearable computing for productivity.
All right, thanks. So I get to talk about wearable computing, I think because I volunteered since I've been testing or wearing the Google Glass for about 18 months. And so originally, I think when we talked about doing this session, we were just going to do it on Google Glass. But the more we kind of thought about it, the more that we thought this is part of kind of a bigger picture in terms of the type of computing that Google Glass is. And so we thought we'd just kind of back up and go big picture on wearable computing. So the novelty of glass has kind of gone away. The expectations of this particular wearable device have kind of been realigned. So we thought that we would go back and just do more of an overview on wearable computing. And this will be one of probably several sessions that we do on wearable computing over the next several years. We're right at the beginning of the curve in terms of uptake and adoption rates on things like wearables. So that's what we're going to go through. So I guess to start, we have to do the definition thing on kind of what is wearable computing. I'm not sure it really even needs a definition because it's pretty self-descriptive. Here's one that comes from Wikipedia, and as the name implies, it's computing devices worn on a person's body. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be all processor intensive. It might be part of their clothes, so threads have different capabilities that are being considered wearable type computers or wearable devices that kind of all get grouped together into one lump category. So clothes, jewelry, or more and more specialized accessories. So things like watches or glasses, those types of things. So some of the characteristics of wearable devices or wearable computing is typically it's mobile. So I can be moving around. I don't have any wired connections. I can go wherever I need to go. It's a mobile type of platform. There's a trend or a debate right now on what the best or what some of the use cases are. Are they specialized computing, if you think about like the Fitbit, where it just deals with healthcare and fitness type activities, or is it more of general type computing, which is more kind of the Apple Watch, where you can do more than one thing with the device. So there's kind of an unsettled debate on what use cases are going to fit what applications there. Sensors, most wearable computers or wearable devices have several sensors in them. It may be sensors to track your movement. It may be sensors to track rotation of different things. It may be sensors on your skin to track temperature, salt content in your sweat, heartbeat, all of those kinds of things. But more and more these sensors are in all kinds of wearable devices. And increasingly, the devices are getting smaller and more inconspicuous. So obviously, I'm wearing the Google Glass. If you think about Google Glass as an example, really the battery could be in my pocket. I could have small inconspicuous wires. You might not even know someone is wearing this type of devices. And there are lots of kind of spyware type devices that are out there. You see them in some of the different magazines. But more and more, those are becoming the norm rather than the exception. So smaller and inconspicuous. And maybe the most important thing about kind of where wearables are going is that they're always connected. So they're all talking to the internet, either via wireless or via Bluetooth to a smartphone. They're always passing information back and pulling information forward. So that kind of gives us an overview. It's not as though this is a new concept. If we think about wearable technology, this goes back, I think, to 1600s. It's a ring that was an abacus. So that's a computing device that was from the 1600s. If we go back even further, as we come forward in time, Dick Tracy certainly was the watch with the video on it. Watch is another technology that's really a wearable type device. Technology, not so much computing device at its origin, but if we think about watches, they've been around since the 16th century. Wrist watches have been around shortly thereafter. If we go to eyeglasses, eyeglasses are technology in and of themselves, right? Just because they're corrective lenses. So they augment our ability to see correctly. This is a guy, his name is Stephen Mann. He's from MIT, and he's one of the earliest big developers in terms of wearable computing, and specifically, he was interested in eyewear and kind of augmented reality, what a computing device attached to a person. And in his case, you can see he's got all kinds of different devices, the glasses, speakers, all kinds of different things that he's played with. And you can see over the 30 years or 35 years that he's been involved in it, how much the different devices have changed. And so if you think Google Glass got a lot of strange looks, I can't imagine what this guy got as he was walking around campus. So it's not new. Probably the most notable devices in the wearable world today are the Google Glass and the Apple Watch. Those are the two that have kind of broken through the noise and developed at least the perception of mass market potential. I'm not sure that either of them are there yet, but that's certainly the direction that they're going. And if we think of other types of devices that we already have, think of hearing aids, think of headphones. Headphones are really a wearable computer device. Pedometers, all of those types of things that are relatively normal are becoming smaller and smarter. So that's kind of where wearables have gone. Here's just a different view of the history if we think about kind of looking backwards on wearable computing. Digital was a big advance in wearable computing up until now where everything is connected, that I've kind of already mentioned. Okay, so that's kind of the history of computing. So where do people think that it's going to go? I think we are on kind of a precipice of these types of devices moving forward significantly. If you look at some of these projections, this one is from a company called BI Intelligence. They talk about in the next 3 to 4 years up to almost 200 million. This one shows 160. I've seen other ones, 200 million devices shipped. The vast majority of the expectations are that those will be smartwatches. That's kind of the hot category right now. But between smartwatches and fitness type devices, those are the two big market areas. So that's where the majority of devices are probably going to be recognized from. In terms of dollars, how big is this marketplace? If you think of Gartner, which is a consulting company that does projections out into the future and does a lot of data research on new devices and different trends versus fads. They're expecting that the market size for wearables will be in the $5 billion range as of next year. If we look out 2 or 3 years beyond that, the numbers get a little bit more difficult to kind of maintain consistency, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 billion. So from 5 to 30 billion, a 6-fold increase in the next 3 to 4 years. That's probably pretty accurate. As I was looking around and kind of testing the numbers, I think that's probably a pretty safe assumption. And then that's still on probably more the lower side of the curve. Once we get into 2020 and a little bit beyond, I think we'll see kind of the hockey stick effect where these things really go up. So you're probably talking between 20% growth. I've seen projections as high as 45% growth. I talked a little bit about niche markets, so you can see smartwatches and fitness type tools as the main niche markets. All others are in that little light blue category at the top. But I think it's probably worthwhile to spend a little bit of time looking in that area. So I just picked out a few examples that we'll take a look at in just a minute. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of what the current use case is. So how are people actually using these things today? And so in my mind, I've come up with 3 categories. I think there are probably 3 areas that kind of group the major use cases of wearables today. First is notifications. So people, I'll use again Google Glass, since that's the one I'm the most familiar with, as the example. People think that Google Glass is going to be this world-changing experience, or even the Apple Watch is going to be this world-changing experience. I don't think that's really the case. It's a very subtle difference in terms of what you can do. It shaves seconds off of different functions that you may do, not having to reach in your pocket to pick up your phone. It sounds like that's probably not that significant, but I'll tell you, the longer that you wear it, the more significant it becomes. So for me, I know that I become more dependent on it now, because if I'm wearing my sunglasses or something, I'll reach up and I'll tap my temple because I want to see what's going on. I forget that I have them on. So it just becomes kind of an extended part of how you interact. So notifications, things like messages that come through, emails, texts, and it's very subtle. Again, it might be a tap on your wrist with the watch. It's a little ding in my ear, and then the screen will pop up. From a sensor standpoint, all I have to do is move my eyes. There's an eye tracking sensor in the Google Glass, so if I just move my eyes to the upper right, and there's a notification there, it will show it to me. I don't have to move my hands anywhere or take any action for it to show that to me. And if I'm in the middle of something else and I don't do that, it won't show. So those are nice little features that don't seem like they're that huge and make a big difference in your life, but as you add up hundreds of those experiences over a day or a week, it really does make a pretty big difference. So notifications is the first use case, and things like memory aids. So as I'm going into a meeting, it will tell me, hey, don't forget you're driving across town. So it'll give me a notification, you need to leave in 10 minutes in order to make it to that next meeting on time. Those are the subtle kinds of things that wearables will be giving us. The second category, I wasn't sure whether to call it search or research, but it's really the ability to use voice recognition or voice command to kind of get additional information. So with my family, it'll be around the dinner table usually, is where one of the kids will ask a question about, who is the artist that did such and such? And it's a kind of a race to who can get to their phone first, or who can, I'll just nod my head, Google will pop up, and I can say, okay, Google, search for Picasso, or whatever it may be. That's really powerful. Again, it's subtle, but it's extremely powerful. Just the ability to remember things or to get information and do research. It's not the same kind of research that we might have thought about when you would go to the library for three hours at a time to do in-depth research, but when it's there every day and you're constantly learning about new things, why are power lines 20 feet in the air or whatnot, and you can get that kind of instantaneous feedback, it's really significant. So again, it sounds subtle, but it's pretty significant. And then the last one is monitoring. So wearable devices have the sensors I talked about that monitor. It might be monitoring your heartbeat. It might be monitoring your location. So the devices increasingly know where you are. It's not necessarily all wearable computers that do that. Your smartphone would do the same thing. But as you start combining some of these things, and so I've used the example under monitoring of location. So now I can tell Glass, hey, remind me to pick up milk when I'm at Hy-Vee next week. And it will create a to-do on my to-do list to pick up milk. And it's also smart enough, if there are technologies called geofencing, or sometimes just by the wireless signal, the network is smart enough to know that I'm at Hy-Vee, and sure enough, I'll get a ding in my ear and it'll say, oh, you wanted to get milk. Those kinds of things become really powerful. So those are kind of the current use cases. I think people are starting to come up with broader use cases. So I wanted to go through just a couple of examples to kind of give you a sense of the range of these other products outside of glasses and watches. So the first one that we're going to take a look at is a piece of jewelry. It's also interesting to look at how these things are marketed. So this is a piece of jewelry that's smart jewelry that really targets women specifically. So we'll take a look at this one. This one is a pendant. Yep. Are we getting audio? All right, I can talk through it, that's fine. So the first one is a woman, and they go through different use cases of how they might use it. So it really markets toward health and fitness. It markets toward understanding your body. So there's one scene, I think, where she's sleeping. It tracks her sleep. There's one scene, I think, at the beginning where the woman is going through, is about to give a presentation. And so you can tell she's really nervous, and she's looking at her smartphone, and the wearable device is telling her what her breathing pattern is. And then it's also suggesting different exercises that she can use, so breathing exercises. So that's this device. This is one that's actually available today. The pendant that she's got on, you can see kind of underneath the red play button there. Anyone guess kind of how much it might cost? You think a lot? Not bad. $120. So 120 bucks for that, and it's available today. So that's one that actually exists out there in the market today. Let's do the next one. At least just through the video. We won't have audio, so I might try and talk over it. But this one is a motorcycle helmet. Okay, so a little bit different use case. Again, highly specialized niche. It's called Scully, but it uses heads-up displays. It connects to your smartphone, so there's audio in the video if you could see it or hear it, where it actually uses your phone connection, so it can monitor the noise or control the noise within the helmet a little bit more. So just kind of take a look at this one. So yeah, so this one was one from 2014. It's been out for a while or announced for a while. I don't think that this one is yet available. So order for this one, or you can pre-order, and I think their estimated ship date is like 2015, December of 2015. So it's interesting to watch them without audio. So you can see the different things. Rear view camera, so you can actually see behind what's going on behind you. GPS, so you see maps, of course a tinted visor so that you get control. Heads-up display, so you can see speed in the upper right-hand corner. You get the rear camera as well. It was really quick there, but that was where a call was coming in. So it would give audio to him that there was a call coming in, or her. There's a second segment where it gives turn-by-turn instructions through the helmet. You could hear music as part of the helmet. But this is one that I think has a lot of potential. They talk about the technology that's used in it and how it's the wave of the future and whatnot. I don't remember if it says anything more about the different technologies that are in it or not, or does any more showing of it. So if you search for Scully out on YouTube, you'll find this video. The previous one, if you do a search for Bella Beat, and it's called The Leaf, you'll see that video. And they're worthwhile. They're only a couple minutes each, but I think they give pretty good examples of kind of what that technology is. So that one I mentioned, orders are being taken December of 2015. Any idea on cost? Barb, you have any idea? What's a normal motorcycle helmet cost?
$150 to about $150.
150 bucks, so I'll multiply that by 10. About $1,500. So that's where it's at. The last one that I wanted to show is a little bit different. This video actually goes more into the technical side of it, but it's a ring. And what the ring does, it's called the Nod. So if you want to do the search on the YouTube video for this one, it's a Nod. It's a control device. So if we think of kind of potential use cases for this one, they'll show gaming use cases where it's used to control games either on your smartphone, or I'm sure that we'll show it. I'll start playing it since we don't have audio so that we can talk over it. It's not just smartphone. You can it'll interact with your big display, so you can see he's looking at a TV. You can use it to do gesturing, and I don't know if anyone has Netflix on their Wii, but you get that kind of interface to use to choose movies, and it is lousy. It is a pain in the butt to try and figure out how to type on the Wii. So this is kind of the proposed solution for that. You can see there he's playing video games, turning pages. Probably the biggest use case from an academic standpoint on this one is one that's, again, very subtle, but as you're walking around and instructing students and you've got a presentation up on the board, you can control your presentation. So it works with PowerPoint or with Google Chrome. So keyboard. They have a new version that's just been released that actually has a thumb drive on it. So it actually has game controllers. It has buttons on it. But this is a good example of just how small some of the components are getting, and really pretty usable type devices. So this one is also available today, and I think this one is $100. Yeah, $99 for this one. So those are 3 different examples, totally different niche markets, different types of technology, but that gives you a sense of kind of where the wearables market is at. So there were several other ones that I found pretty interesting. There's one that has kids' pajamas, and the pajamas have different codes on them. And so you can use your smartphone to focus on one of the different codes, kind of like a QR code. It's not using QR technology, but a code, and it will pick a story to read to the kids. So the idea is to try and encourage your kids for bedtime. There are fitness trackers out there for pets. Those are pretty widely available. So if you want to find out how fit your pet is. One that I thought was a very interesting use of sensor technology is a golf glove. So there's a golf glove that you can wear that has several components in it that will monitor your swing, pressure points on your fingers, so it looks at your grip, your swing arc, and various things, and then collects all of that data, passes it back to you so that you can analyze your swing. There was one that's, they called it a dream-enhancing headband. And so you put this thing on your head when you go to sleep, and it is pretty much just a headband. But then it picks up your brain waves, and it senses when you're dreaming or when you're in a certain type of dream state. And the idea is that they will then cue some kind of little sound or music so that your subconscious knows that you're dreaming, and then you can control your dreams better. That's how they're marketing it. There are some that are just tattoos. So these are different kinds of wearables that you would stick on and can either monitor certain things or do different kinds of sensing. And then one of the ones that I thought was the most different is socks, a pair of socks that have RFID chips in them that will go through the washer so that you can match up your socks when they come out of the dryer. So a lot of different use cases, and that's kind of the idea is most people when they're looking at this market are just thinking watches and glasses, but there are just tons of different wearable use cases out there. And so that's what we kind of wanted to do with TechShare Day is put some of those in front of you so that you can see them and start thinking a little bit on kind of what would the applications be for education. So I think in terms of wearable use in education, the jury is still out a little bit. I know the Horizon report is a report that higher education puts together on kind of trends in educational technology over the next 5 years, and it kind of projects forward. They put wearables in the category of interesting developments or something, or important developments for educational technology, and they're forecasting out the impact of that in 2 to 3 years. But when I dug into it a little bit deeper, the use cases are not very well defined. So I think it's going to be up to us to come up with some of those use cases and really think through what we might be using these devices for. So I know Kelly Halma did a presentation earlier with the GoPro and talked about how we're using that in OMM. We've tried it with the Google Glass as well. So that's definitely a use case. If you extend that out a little bit and think about students wearing something like Google Glass as they go into their clinical years and they go in with patients, they could actually record their interaction with patients and then send that back to a preceptor or someone, an expert who can give them feedback on their interaction with patients. So it really changes not only the way that education is delivered, but kind of the economics of education, has the potential to change the economics of education as well. So that's one use case. Another one is, I talked a little bit about memory enhancement. If people are familiar with flashcards and kind of flashcard use on smartphones or on computing devices, if you put flashcards and computers together, there are algorithms that will allow you to go through flashcards and they will pop back up for you just at the point that statistically you're going to start forgetting something. So it's an interesting idea for things like anatomy, where a lot of it is just memorization and putting that memorization deeply enough in your brain so that you know where different parts of the body are. It's a great learning tool for things like that. And so if you think of Google Glass or a watch to be able to do that, those might be possible use cases. Since we are kind of in between education and healthcare, healthcare is an area where, to me, if education is kind of still uncertain what the use case for wearables is going to be, healthcare is one that's definitely not. Healthcare is going to be heavily, heavily impacted by wearables. If you look at Google Glass, surgeons are using Google Glass because it's a hands-free device. It gives them the ability to use verbal controls to bring up different things like different images, so that as they're in surgery, they can pull up images, just change their eye focus point and see things. There are really a lot of interesting things going on with health and fitness in terms of wearables there, and I think Trina's going to talk a little bit more about some of those devices, so I don't want to steal too much of her thunder, but that's kind of the direction for health and fitness. The big thing about all of these are the unanswered questions. So to me, there are still lots of things that we don't really know. Who owns the data that's collected from all of these sensors? There's some cutting edge cases out there, but really there's not a lot of precedence out there for these types of questions. Does the company that collects the data and maintains the data, do they own it? Do I own it as an individual? Those are some of the questions.
We have a question from online about addressing the safety concerns with these devices? I don't know if it was it data safety or physical safety, but you might hit on that real quick.
Yeah, probably both. I think that falls right into the same list of unanswered questions. So I know that I have concerns wearing the glass of, just what is this radio so close to my brain going to do to me in the long term. There's a battery back there, I don't know if that's going to have any impact, just nickel that close to me. So I think the jury's still out on a lot of those things. From a safety perspective of things like driving or use cases in that sense, there's a lot more legal precedence because of the quick backlash that came out, when these types of devices first came out, much like smartphones. But in reality, I would argue that when I'm looking at directions on the glass, that it's probably more safe because I just shift my eyes slightly rather than having to look down at a smartphone or even onto the console to find directions. So I think the jury's still out in that one as well. Social norms is another area that I don't think anyone really knows what the social norms are going to be. Those will have to be developed over the next few years. So I think what we'll do is we'll continue to have these kinds of conversations. This is just kind of the first one to kind of give you a sense of where wearables are at. Yeah.
There was a report or a demonstration that reporters went to, and they were interviewing people with Google glasses, and they were being hit or people were ripping the Google glasses off because of concern that everything that they were saying was being recorded of that. And that has really cut down, I think, some of the use in the reporting community. However, in the law enforcement community, I think it's a plus.
I agree. Law enforcement are some of the people who are most interested in them. I'll have a lot of law enforcement people come up to me and say, how do you like those? The privacy concerns, in my mind, have been way overblown. I think it would be difficult for me to record someone for any length of time without their knowledge. You can see when I turn it on, I don't know if this will show up on the camera, but you can see the red light that pops up. It's pretty self-evident. They could make it a little bit more evident. Yeah, you want to zoom in there, Corey? So you can see that it's recording if I turn it off, and then you can see it go away. So it's not right out there, big flashing lights, and I think that those are some of the social norms that we'll figure out eventually. But yeah, those are the kinds of issues. So great, thank you guys.